Thanks to David and the rest of the InvestNet team and for the invitation to be here. I should say, in typical Irish public service fashion of doing more with less, since May of this year I'm also responsible for the programmes at Science Foundation Ireland. So that includes actually the Research Centres programme that John just spoke about. So I'd like to give you a short update on where we are with that, along with the rest of our other programmes and funding. But I guess today is an opportunity to focus on Ireland's national competitiveness and I suppose particularly how we can maintain the competitiveness that we built up in the pharma manufacturing sector, where we have such a long history of success. I guess from my point of view, while it's certainly not the only component in that competitiveness, it's also an opportunity to remind ourselves of the role of science and engineering, and I suppose particularly science and engineers, that skills base in our national competitiveness. It's a space where there's always more to be done. You know, I'm very optimistic. There's always new discoveries to be made, new technologies to be developed. And I guess today gives us an opportunity to think about how we can work together to achieve this. And I guess particularly for these next 20 minutes to focus on the role of academic research in that whole ecosystem. Science Foundation Ireland, together with our innovation partners, we work closely with the IDA and Enterprise Ireland, and of course all of the higher education institutes in Ireland. We're focusing our energies at the moment on highlighting how this investment in research and development, in people, in new ideas, is really the right way to build a strong and sustainable economy here in Ireland, and really that we need to build for the future. I just want to begin just by talking a little bit, reminding ourselves about the purpose of SFI funding. SFI is, I suppose, an instrument of government policy, and it's a policy that's been clearly articulated and probably re-articulated in several policy documents, both from the current and previous government. As most of you will know, our funding comes through the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation, so we always have that particular focus on economic and enterprise development. But I guess the underpinning or the core of what SFI does is still to achieve excellence in science as a foundation for enterprise. It enables innovation, the human resources that Liam talked about that are so necessary, generally increasing the capability of the whole higher education sector and really focusing now on enterprise and academic collaboration. In the 12 years since we've been established, we've invested about €1.5 billion. Just to give you a sense of how that kind of breaks down, the entire public spend on R&D is about 600 million a year. Of that, SFI's budget is about a quarter. And you can see that the vast majority of that goes out in straight grants to the higher education sector. We don't give any grants directly to industry. That's really the sphere of Enterprise Ireland and IDA. And you can see that approximately 40% of our budget goes into centre and cluster type activities. About 60% goes into funding individual teams and investigators. I think that's likely to shift a little bit perhaps, maybe more to 50-50, but broadly speaking, that's the profile at the moment. I think the government has talked about their commitment to science, and I think if you look at the SFI budget over the last number of years, you can see that they've broadly delivered on that commitment in the sense that the SFI budget has remained essentially unchanged over the last number of years. I think when you look at some of our Mediterranean cousins who are in similar sort of economic situations, we see cuts of 50% in the science budget. I think we've been lucky here to see a maintenance. I think even though we're not having the increases that were originally planned, I think sticking at where we are is probably a good outcome at this stage. I should mention as well that SFI is only one component of this system, and others have made significant investment. I think particularly the Higher Education Authority, through the Programme for Research and Third Level Institutes, have made just a huge impact in terms of their infrastructure investment. Over the last decade or so, they've invested over £1 billion, and I think for those of you who have worked with academia or interacted with academia in Ireland for a number of years, you'll see a real transformation in the facilities and equipment that our academic teams now have access to. And I think that really enables them to deliver what you need. And this year, SFI will invest a further 30 million in investment, upgrading equipment, introducing a new access charge model, which will again help to open up all of this equipment so it's available for use by industry as well as by the academic teams in the country. SFI will shortly release its new strategy document called Agenda 2020. We released a draft of this document early in September for a public consultation. That consultation is now complete. We've taken on the feedback from the consultation, we've modified the document, and it'll be coming out shortly. We're hoping it'll be launched in the next 6 weeks or so. Agenda 2020 sets out a vision, I guess, of our preferred future for Ireland, when Ireland in 2020 is the best country in the world for scientific research with impact. I suppose what we mean when we say that is that the scientific research in Ireland powers an innovative and enterprising economy, creates high-value jobs, attracts, develops and nurtures businesses, scientists and talented people, and also is connected and respected internationally. I think what we're also very keen on is that Ireland is the best country to develop partnerships. People have talked about our small scale. John has just talked about the really unique partnership in the SSPC. And I think we have an advantage here in Ireland with our connectedness, where we can develop really effective partnerships between academia, business, philanthropy and government. We're interested in having a country where the public is engaged with the scientific debate. With all new progress brings, I suppose, challenges, sometimes ethical dilemmas. We want to have a public in Ireland that's prepared to engage on those issues in an informed way. I guess to achieve what we want in this document, we really need to engage as broadly as we possibly can. It's great to have a consultation for a strategy document, but we don't just want to put it on the shelf. We intend to release updates every year and update all of our targets. And to do that, we'll have to engage with all of you, as well as with business and with your international partners as well, because we also need to hear from them what they need and how we can help to deliver it in Ireland. And I think that's why the conference today is a really useful starting point. I guess Liam and I were involved in a conference probably over a year ago down in Cork, and I think it's important to keep up the dialogue. You can't just have one event and all go back to your own work. You have to remember to keep having the conversations. I guess the 4 key goals in Agenda 2020 for SFI as an agency: we want to be the best science funding agency in the world at creating impact from excellent research and demonstrating value for money. And, I think that the words here are chosen very particularly. We know Ireland's not going to be the best at absolutely everything, but we feel if we make clever investments, we can really show very good impact for money and impact. We really want to be the exemplar in building partnerships, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end, because I think we have an offer to all of you to come to us and engage in partnership. Again, strong public support for the scientific mission. And I suppose for SFI, we want to represent the modern public service. We're already quite a lean organisation. We're 37 people managing a portfolio of around 400 million and about 10 new programmes every year. So we're lean already, but we intend to stay that way, really, and deliver as much as we can with a small team. The Agenda 2020 document is deliberately ambitious and stretching, but I think that's what we need to do. I mean, I think, like Liam said, if you ask for 5%, you'll get 5%, and maybe we've set ourselves 120%, but I think that's okay. I think we'll get as close to that as we can. And, for us, investing in research and development is a fundamental part of the recovery strategy. And really, from where I stand, I don't really see a plan B, apart from ourselves, our creativity, our innovation, and how we're going to deliver more competitiveness in business. Just looking back over what we have achieved so far, I think it's worth reminding ourselves that we do have a lot of success. I think the SSPC that John just spoke about is a really shining example. But just to, I guess, focus at the higher level, we now support around 3,000 researchers led by 300 leading scientists. And each one of those scientists has been evaluated by the top leaders internationally to say that they are at the cutting edge of their field. That's not a statement we could have made 10 years ago. In terms of the university rankings, obviously there's been a bit of slippage recently, but essentially all of the universities have increased their global standing in the last 10 years. And as the Minister mentioned, we've achieved some particularly outstanding results in some areas. I'll just come back to that in a minute. Huge number of international partnerships, and again, I think this is critical for a small country. We're not going to be able to be the best at everything, but we can work with the best, and there's no reason why we shouldn't do that. We have several programs in place to encourage researchers to work with the top institutions globally. And I think leveraging is a really important thing to talk about. For the 150 million that SFI invests every year, those research teams leverage around 60 million from non-Irish exchequer sources. And I think when you combine that with the general return to the economy of all of the salaries from the research teams and everything, really it's essentially a zero-sum game for the government. It's a smart investment. Again, the Minister mentioned the work that we do with Enterprise Ireland in terms of commercialisation. We've seen significant increases in the number of licences, spin-outs across the system. Again, you might expect that with more money going in, but I think it's not a given. And again, with a new system, it's important that we keep monitoring these things and insisting that those standards are met. And I think, again, this job retention that John talked about is really critical and probably something that we don't discuss enough. We again, looking at job announcements, though, over the first quarter of this year, we could see that SFI research teams have links to the companies that announced about 60% of the jobs in the first quarter of this year. And I think that's really important. Now, that might be a link in that they have engagements with some of the researchers. It may be that they're involved in a formal collaboration. But what it means is when the companies are making investment decisions here, they want to understand what's going on in the research base because it's a relevant investment factor. And again, just in terms of the conferences and I suppose being involved in a discussion, having an engaged public and engaged enterprise, I hope you can just see that there. We're involved in a huge amount of interaction and networking supports over 35 conferences annually. I show this graph quite a lot when I talk because I think it's quite dramatic and I think, again, the Minister alluded to it, but I think it's just worth reiterating. Sometimes from an industry point of view, we look at research publications as something that are rather academic and irrelevant. But every research publication is a new discovery. It represents an important step forward. Obviously, some of them are more critical than others, but each one is important. And I guess they're measured internationally. These are not data that we produce. They're measured internationally by their impact, by how many times other scientists refer to that data. And I think just to show you on this graph, you can see the top two bars there. That's the UK at the top and Germany. Down here we have Poland, Greece and Portugal. This is the world average here, and this is the OECD average. The EU 27 average is just below that. And just looking at Ireland's journey over the last 20 years, I think it's important to stop and look at that. This data has a time lag because we need to say once a paper is published, we need to give it some time to see how many times people refer back to it. But we're fairly confident that this graph will be going up again significantly in the next time period. So we've certainly gone from maybe nowhere to somewhere. We have a journey still to really be at excellent. I think we can see our competition up there. But it's important to say that we've done well and we've made progress. As well as developing really outstanding people, I think it's important to look at unique opportunities. Some of those are geographical, for example, our opportunities to address issues in renewable energy. Obviously size, I've talked about, our connectivity, but also our ability to maybe be a test bed, looking at things like factories of the future. But I think as well, looking at what we already have, it's important to do that. And what we have here is a very, very strong sector that we need to protect. And I suppose for us, one of the ways that we've tried to engage is through our industry academic partnership programs. Again, as the Minister mentioned, we had about a 20% increase in companies working with our groups last year. You can see now that our research teams, those 300 or so research teams, are involved in about 900 collaborations with almost 600 companies. That's about 250 multinationals and about 350 SMEs. So I think it's important to say that it's stretched across all sectors and it's reaching into lots of different size companies. I think our engagements as well with government departments, semi-state bodies, private foundations and charities, they've also increased by about 20% last year. I think it's a good time at the moment just to talk for a minute or two around our new research centres programme. Some of you may know that we ran programmes called the CSETs and the cluster programmes, which are, I suppose, reaching the end of their terms in the coming years. What we currently support around 30 of these centres and clusters. And what we've decided is that strategically, this is too many. And for a country the size of Ireland, we need fewer centres, and they probably need to be larger. So I suppose the challenge that we put out to the academic community was come into us, come in bigger and better, join forces if you can, and also you need to bring your industry partners to the table and you need to ask them to do more. And I think the academic community have done that. In this new programme, industry has to put 10% of the cash on the table and 20% in kind. I think this is the programme which has leveraged the largest private sector investment to date. At the moment, we're in the final stages of review. We have 11 centres under review. If you take those 11 applications, that represents over 50 million of industry cash on the table. I think that's a very, very strong statement about how important these are. I think the bad news and the challenge is that if SFI continues to do well and get a budget of 150 million or around that, we might be able to fund 4 of these centres. And that's a problem, because most of these are centres that are already up and running. They're delivering to different sectors. So I think what our message to government has been is we have a success story here and we need to keep it going. And guess what? Industry has put its hand in its pocket to help pay for this, but we also need to do our part. And I think, if any of you have opportunities over the coming weeks, that's an important message. Relatively speaking, this is a small amount of money, but I think it has a huge impact, and that's the message that we're giving to government. What we want to do, obviously, we've whittled these 11 down from almost 100 pre-proposals. So all of these are already outstanding. I'm fairly sure that many, certainly more than 4 or 5, will be fundable and really at high quality. So I think what I don't want to be, the position I don't want to be in January or February is turning around to people and say, you did meet the bar, you did everything we asked you to, and we still can't fund you. And unfortunately, that's what's facing us at the moment. I just want to mention briefly the research prioritisation exercise. This was kind of an industry-led consortium that produced a report earlier this year. I just think it's worth mentioning, if you take the 14 areas that have been selected for priority, and again, to be in the SFI Research Centres competition, you need to be in at least one of these areas. But if you take, obviously, therapeutics, formulation, processing and drug delivery, that should be manufacturing, competitiveness and process technologies and novel manufacturing, there's clear synergies here between the industry in this room and where government is placing its research priorities. So I think that's good news. I suppose what I would say is that we can think more broadly. And again, I think the previous speakers have alluded to this. I think there's opportunities in energy, in water, in business services, in supply chain management. And I think if the industry is really clever, what it can also do is tap into research that's going on in the data analytics space, that's going on in the business processes space. And I think certainly that's something that, if you're interested in finding out more about, we'd be very interested in talking to you and maybe linking you to groups that you're not traditionally working with or know about in the chemistry space or in the manufacturing space. I think it's also important, John mentioned this, I guess, rather unhelpful debate that's going on around basic research and applied research. SFI's mandate will be expanded to include applied research. That doesn't mean we won't continue to fund outstanding curiosity-driven research. And again, I think it's important to say the government has very much stated that these 6 underpinning areas will continue to be supported, and we will continue to support those. Just again, listing some of the relevant groups here. You're actually going to hear from many of them today, so rather than me giving you a version of what they do, and John's already talked about the SSPC, you're going to hear from David Braden from the IDDN, I think, shortly. But we can give you information. If you want more information or you're interested in collaborating, please just contact me, and I'd be very happy to try and help you find an appropriate academic partner. And I suppose finishing on partnership, in Agenda 2020, we've opened the door to partnership. This is very flexible. So, in fact, it's so flexible and so new, you won't find anything about it on our website. But essentially what we've said to you, come to us with opportunities. We'll probably ask you to 50-50 cost share with us, but let's talk about it. If we have the money and you have an idea and you want to share an investment, come and talk to us. It could be at a national level. might be at an institutional level. You know, if you're interested in adding a different skill set, maybe you'd like to co-fund a position in a university with SFI. Maybe you'd like to partner with us on some industry exchange programs or fellowships. Really, the offer is there. And I think I'll just finish with that. I'll leave you with my contact details there. And as I said, please do contact me if I can help you find an appropriate academic partner from the Science Foundation Ireland system. Thank you very much for your attention.